You can save diligently, invest well, and still lose 3 full years of retirement just by withdrawing from the wrong account first. There's one withdrawal order that research shows works best. The problem is most people either don't understand why it works or they break it without realizing the damage they're doing. I'm Stephen Neely, a retirement planner and wealth advisor. I've worked with hundreds of retirees over the years, and choosing the wrong withdrawal order is a mistake I see all the time with people who have actually done a lot of things right. In today's video, we're going to cover 3 things. First, I'll show you the default withdrawal order that research shows works best. Second, I'll walk through why that order works using a simple side-by-side example so you guys can actually see the math. And finally, I'll cover the specific situations where breaking that rule does make sense. So with that, let's get into the video. Now, before I dig in, I want to be clear about what I mean by withdrawal order. Most retirees with any meaningful savings don't have just one investment account. They usually have several different account types. So to begin with, you might have cash or checking for short-term needs. The vast majority of people have accounts like that. From there, you probably have a taxable brokerage account. So through the years, they were able to accumulate excess savings and they started investing that. And usually that's in some mix of stocks, bonds, types of mutual funds and things like that. Now, in a taxable brokerage, you're dealing with capital gains, dividends, and interest income, and you're going to have those types of taxes hit that account every year. From there, many retirees also have pre-tax retirement accounts like a 401k or a traditional IRA. Every dollar that comes out of those accounts is going to be taxed as ordinary income. Now, the trade-off is that while it's in that account, it grows tax-free, which is great, and that's unlike the taxable brokerage account that I just mentioned, so it can continue to compound even if there is interest income or capital gains. Many people also have Roth accounts and sometimes even health savings accounts. The distinction here is that when you pull money from these accounts, as long as it's used correctly, your withdrawals are going to be tax-free. Just like the pre-tax 401k or IRAs, the earnings and growth also is not taxed while it's in that form. So, most people, like I said, with any kind of means, coming into retirement, they have a mix of money in each one of these different account types. Now, the question for our video today is, which accounts do you spend down first? You could take money proportionally from all of them, and in fact, some people do sometimes. You could decide to live off of your retirement accounts, like the 401k or IRA, and leave your taxable money alone. I often see people doing that because they think, hey, these are my retirement accounts, that was the purpose, and this is where I'm going to draw money from, and I'm not going to touch those other accounts unless I really have to. Or you could follow a specific sequence. Now, that sequence is what we're talking about here, the order you pull income from these accounts. Once you understand that setup, the researched back answer starts to make a lot more sense. Importantly, when not to use this order is also going to make sense. Now, before I show you this order, let me tell you the most common mistake I see. A lot of people go into retirement thinking this way. They look at their taxable brokerage account and say, well, I don't want to touch that because I'll have to pay capital gains. And they look at their retirement accounts and think that money is for retirement, so that's where my income should come from. And I just kind of mentioned that. So they start pulling from their IRA or 401k first, and they leave that taxable account alone. Now, that mindset I think is completely understandable, but what it misses is that avoiding capital gains today often creates a much bigger tax problem later, and that's exactly what I want to show you next. So let's talk about the default withdrawal order that works best for most retirees, right? And in this instance, the sequence is you start by withdrawing from your taxable accounts first. So, that's going to be, like I said, your checking savings, and then those taxable brokerage accounts is really what we're focused on here. So you're going to draw down from there first. After that, you move to pre-tax retirement accounts like IRAs and 401ks, and you leave your Roth accounts for last. That's the sequence. Now, if you're thinking, okay, I've heard that before, that's fair. It's not a new idea, but there's some really good research out there on this where they've tested it, and generally what they've found is that for most people, going in that order, you're going to save on average, or maybe not save, but you'll extend the life of your funds in retirement by close to 3 years. So, look, that's actually quite a lot, when you think about it. And I think what's usually missing from this argument is an explanation of why that order works, as well as, the significance to your overall retirement plan, and also when following it blindly can actually backfire. Because one important component of this video is going to be explaining when you don't want to use that order. Ultimately, what this comes down to when you look at the research and you see how it prolongs the life of a portfolio is how different types of accounts are taxed over time. Some dollars lose value every single year because of taxes, other dollars don't. So let me show you why this works using a simple side-by-side example. For this example, I'm going to keep things simple. We don't need to model every detail, just the core mechanics. So you can see in my Excel here, let's say we have 3 accounts. You got a taxable brokerage account, you got a traditional IRA, and you have a Roth IRA. And for simplicity, we're going to assume all 3 are invested the same way and each earns the same return. And so, one important note here is that while each account earns the same overall return, from a tax perspective, these dollars behave very differently. In the taxable account, you're dealing with taxes every year. You got dividends, interest, and capital gains, like I mentioned earlier. So, even if the investments earn, let's say a 6% return, the after-tax growth rate is lower. That account is quietly leaking value over time. Now, in a traditional IRA, nothing is taxed while the money is growing. Taxes only show up when you take money out. And then in a Roth account, same thing as far as the growth, it's not taxed while it's growing, but qualified withdrawals are tax-free. So right away, you've got $3 that look the same on paper, but behave very differently over time. Some dollars leak, some don't. Now, just to give you a concrete illustration of this, like I said, I modeled this out. We'll start with $1 million portfolio. Like I said, we'll split it evenly across 3 accounts, taxable, traditional IRA, and Roth IRA. There's an annual withdrawal need of $40,000. And we'll invest the portfolio in a 60-40 mix of stocks and bonds and rebalance it back to that allocation every year. Stocks earn a certain return, bonds earn a certain return. There's a cost basis in the taxable account, and turnover is relatively low. We're talking about, I think I've modeled 5% a year. We've got interest income, we've got qualified dividend income, and for taxes, we assume a 22% federal marginal tax rate and a 15% long-term capital gains rate. And, to keep things simple, we'll assume these guys live in a state that doesn't tax income. Now, in the real world, withdrawals would likely increase with inflation, and returns are going to vary year to year, and, taxes would change and so on. But for simplicity's sake, we don't need to get into that level of detail. And the important thing is we've got all of the big assumptions covered. And what we did is we modeled this over 25 years, and we'll compare 2 strategies here. The first one is the default sequence, taxable, pre-tax, then after-tax, Roth. The second is something that I mentioned earlier, where we just take a proportionate share from each account every year. So like I said, each year, same spending, same investment, same taxes. The only difference is the withdrawal order. Now, here's what happens. After 25 years, the portfolio that followed the suggested withdrawal sequence ends with about $3.5 million. The proportionate withdrawal strategy ends more than $500,000 lower. Now, if we want to be fair and adjust for taxes at the end, because Roth dollars aren't taxed the same as an IRA, we want to do that too. But even after doing that, the adjusted ending value for the suggested sequence is still, $372,000 higher. So no matter how you slice it, the difference is meaningful. And, to put that in context, $372,000 is several additional years of retirement spending for this household, even after adjusting for inflation. And like I said earlier, the paper I mentioned, it shows that on average, this sequence is going to result in about an extra 3 years in retirement funds for you. And, this model kind of proves that out. Now, ultimately, it's not about avoiding taxes entirely, right? You're going to pay taxes either way, but it's about when you pay them, which dollars you let compound and which dollars you drain first. And by spending the leakiest dollars first, that's in the taxable account, the ones with the ongoing tax drag, you give the tax advantage accounts more time to do what they're designed to do. And over long periods of time, that adds up to years of additional income. Now, none of this means you should follow this order blindly every single year. This is the default sequence and it works well on average, but real retirements don't happen on average, right? There are some very specific situations where intentionally breaking this order can make a big difference. Sometimes it could be a 6-figure difference or more, and that's what we need to talk about next. Now, this is one of those areas where knowing the rule isn't enough. I think the hard part is knowing when it actually applies to you. If you're nearing retirement and you want some initial help thinking through how this fits your situation, I've set up an opportunity to register for a completely free retirement assessment. On that call, I'll review your account types, your income needs, and how your current withdrawal approach plays out over time. There's no pressure, no strings attached. And if that sounds helpful, click the link in the description to get started. Now, let's go back and we're going to talk about when breaking this order actually makes sense, because this is the part that gets missed most often. Like I said, there are very specific situations where intentionally breaking that order can make a big difference. So let me walk you through the most important ones. Exception number 1 is low income years before required minimum distributions. One of the biggest planning opportunities I see is in the years after retirement, but before you hit required minimum distribution. In those years, a lot of people have unusually low taxable income. In many cases, they will drop into a lower bracket. In a lot of instances, Social Security may not have started, and you don't have RMDs forcing income. In that window, blindly avoiding IRA withdrawals could be a mistake. Sometimes it makes sense to pull from pre-tax accounts earlier or convert part of an IRA to a Roth IRA to take advantage of those lower tax brackets while they're available. So, the point here is you're not just breaking the rule randomly. You're trading a lower tax rate today for more control later, and that could actually make a big difference in the end. Now, exception number 2 is managing future RMD and Medicare exposure. This is closely related to the first point. If you let your pre-tax accounts grow unchecked for decades, they can turn into a large source of forced income later in retirement. And that forced income doesn't just affect your tax bracket. It can also increase how much of your Social Security is taxed and push you into higher Medicare premium brackets, because tax brackets and Medicare thresholds and other limits don't stay fixed forever. They're adjusted over time, often with inflation. And what you see happens a lot is that somebody, especially with a sizable amount of money in a pre-tax account, their RMDs are going to be in excess of what they actually need to spend. And that you start to get into other tax drags. So this is kind of related to our first point, where during this critical period before you have RMDs, you want to model all of this out and see if it looks like you're going to have to take excessive required minimum distributions. And at that point, you want to see whether or not you'd be better off withdrawing some earlier from your IRA account or 401k, and even doing conversions in this period to just kind of smooth out these cash flows and withdrawals over time, and don't inadvertently bump yourself up into a higher Medicare bracket or tax bracket. Okay, so we move to exception number 3, and this is when you have highly appreciated taxable assets and step up in basis. So this is another situation where the default order can change. Like I said, if you have highly appreciated assets in a taxable account, you realistically expect to pass them to your heirs. In that case, selling those assets now can trigger capital gains that would otherwise disappear through a step up in basis. When that's the goal, it can make sense to spend from retirement accounts instead and preserve taxable assets intentionally. So this is a case where, again, you're going to have to model it out, and you're going to have to sit down with your estate planner and think through the implications of selling these highly appreciated assets instead of passing them on to heirs. Okay, exception number 4, high medical expense years. Later in retirement, large medical expenses can dramatically change the tax picture. Those deductions can make IRA withdrawals far less expensive than they would in a normal year. In those situations, tapping pre-tax accounts earlier or even preserving Roth dollars for other years can improve the overall outcome. In fact, you might even, again, want to do Roth conversions depending on your income needs in those types of years. So this is another example of when timing matters more than the rules. So let's bring this all together. For most retirees, there is a default withdrawal order that makes sense. Taxable accounts first, then pre-tax accounts, and Roths last. That order works because different dollars are taxed differently over time. Some dollars leak every year, others don't. When you spend the leakiest dollars first, you give the tax advantaged accounts more time to compound, and over long periods, that can translate into years of additional income. At the same time, this isn't something you follow blindly. There are specific situations where intentionally deviating from that order makes sense. Low income years, managing for future RMDs and Medicare premiums, estate planning considerations, and certain high expense years for medical expenses. So, again, I think the real risk isn't knowing the rule. It's either ignoring it completely or following it mechanically without understanding when it applies. Now, if you're nearing retirement or already retired and you want some help thinking through how this applies to your situation, I've set up an opportunity to register for a completely free retirement assessment. We'll look at your account types, your income needs, and how your withdrawal strategy may play out over time, and try to set you up on a withdrawal order that makes the most sense for you. You can get started by clicking the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.